thank you very much for coming back to the Germination Station, or if you weren't here for the first talk, welcome. Thank you very much for coming. So, my job is to introduce this fantastic man. He is John Little. He is an innovator in sustainable landscaping, specifically reusing waste products in landscaping. He is also passionate about creating habitats for healthy ecosystems in the garden and biodiversity. And he has a not-for-profit organisation called Care for Capital, and he is so passionate about it that he's got the QR code tattooed on his left arm. So if you want to know more about that, find him and scan his arm. Questions at the end? Over to John.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Wow, I didn't expect that slide. Is it the next one? Right, so thank you all for coming. I've seen, were some of you at the last panel thing where I was ranting on a bit? Good, good. So I'm going to try not to talk about the gardener thing. I'm going to try and restrict myself a little bit and talk about what I'm supposed to be talking about, which I guess is how important our waste can be, the stuff that we sort of throw away can be for wildlife. I'm going to be talking about structure, topography, dead stuff, really important. And we don't get many landscape architects redesign a park and go, what's the priority for this design? Dead things, definitely is, because dead wood, dead vegetation, carcasses, obviously, more tricky to design in, but carcasses very important. But dead vegetation. That's why your compost bins in your gardens are so, so important from a biodiversity point of view. So important, because there's very little dead stuff, isn't there, in public space? Very little, because we don't design it in enough. Structure is the other big one. So when we talk about, you know, there's the whole climate change thing, because every conference we go to now, we talk about climate change, don't we? Because we're cool, we're a bit trendy. We must talk about climate change, obviously very important. And we also talk about the fact that we're going to be Barcelona by 2050, don't we? That's the thing in London, anyway. Sorry, London, sorry, I'm in the West. Rainy, more, yeah. Anyway, in London, it's supposed to be like Barcelona in 2050, so we're encouraged, obviously, to change the way we plant, aren't we? And start using Mediterranean plants, North American plants, stuff that's adapted to cope with the heat, which does make some sense. But what I think is even more important is making our landscapes more complicated, more exciting, actually, is the same thing. More complicated, more exciting, it's the same thing, really. And then we create more microclimates. And if the more microclimates we have, the more niches, the more different places, the more our native flora and fauna can adapt to climate change, yeah? So if, for instance, you're a bee flying around in the big bucolic wildflower meadow that's flat and much the same, then when it gets too hot, you've got nowhere to go, have you? You know what I mean? It's too hot. Where am I going to go? Nowhere, right? If you had a pile of logs or a pile of rubble, or, in the case of this slide, a really bad shed. If you had a really bad shed in the middle of your beautiful wildflower meadow, you'd have somewhere to go, to get cooler, to cool off, to wait there, to hibernate, to do all those wonderful things that you can do in structure. So these things are vitally important. If you think about the whole rewilding thing, what the rewilding conversation does, and what's been so good about it, is that it's driven us to understand what our landscape was like when it was rammed full of biodiversity. What was it like? It was completely trashed, in effect, by millions of bison, beavers, wild boar. With wild boar, you know, we get all a bit fussy about bluebells, beautiful bluebells. If you imagine if that's a natural bluebell wood, wild boar would have thrown them 4 feet in the air, you know? So our landscape was unbelievably complicated because it was disrupted by huge amounts of megafauna, you know? And that's, in effect, what we need to think about now as gardeners, is that duplicating that. Keep thinking about that in your head. You know, when you're digging your little bit of soil over and you're leaving your bit of bare soil and you're planting your plant here, you're doing the wild boar thing, aren't you? You're creating bare soil. It's really, really important. So structure, topography is the other thing. Don't rake everything flat if you can possibly help it. You know, every landscape we have, especially public landscapes, flat. Yeah? Always flat, always all topsoil. So in other words, we've created exactly the same conditions across the whole landscape by using the same topography and the same soil. And what does that do? If you have the same consistent landscape, you get a very similar vegetation, don't you, across the whole thing. If you start mixing up the topography, like in our place, we're on heavy clay. If we want to grow a plant that likes free draining soil and doesn't like winter wet, you know, there's a few of them about, isn't there? Then we just tip a couple of barrow loads of demolition rubble or sand in a pile, and then we put the plant on the top. Immediately, we can grow that plant. As soon as we took that plant and moved it down the pile and put it in our clay soil, it would die. Do you know what I mean? So if we can keep that complication going, you'll extend the type of plants you can grow as well, won't you? You give yourself a much wider range of plants, and you definitely give yourself more microclimates. That's only the first slide, sorry. I feel like I'm going to overrun, maybe, slightly. OK, so complicated places are good. This is our place, this is us being quite complicated. So this is us. Now, I am not suggesting... Is it the next slide, did I say that? No, it's not. I'm not suggesting that we go into beautiful back gardens full of organic soil and rip it all out and put all this rubbish in. I'm not suggesting that. But if you have chance to vary the substrate and the topography, if you have chance, whether you're doing a garden makeover or it's a big housing development or a highways thing, whatever it is where you're disrupting the area anyway, have a think about trying to keep these things more complicated. So in this picture, those circles some of them are waste chalk. The white ones, obviously, are waste chalk from sugar production. So Tate and Lyle Sugar, just up the road from me in the East End of London, they produce, their sugar cane is filtered through chalk. That's the process. Then they have to get rid of it once it's done its job. So we're trialling that to grow plants in. It's amazing to grow plants in. We're trialling it on green roofs. It's amazing for green roofs as well. Don't think just because it's got no organic material in it and it's not topsoil, it's no good for growing plants in. These things are genius, honestly, and they give you a huge variation. So all those things are important. The structure, the topography, the dead stuff. What's the other thing? And one other thing. They're very important because the most important places, if you look at these three places, these are rammed with biodiversity, these three places, and they've all got those things going on. It's not about the plants in these places. It's about those four wonderful things. So you take Great Dixter and Fergus. Now, Fergus is a total biodiversity convert now. And I don't know anyone who's heard him talk recently, but he's all over the biodiversity now, isn't he? I mean, bearing in mind he's the best plantsman probably in the country and has the best garden in the country. He's now all over the biodiversity thing because he knows and he understands, once he had the audit, that a complicated gardened landscape, that's the other thing to remember, is that a gardened place is generally very high in biodiversity. Very high. Don't let conservationists tell you that it's not, right? Because Dixter has got more biodiversity than a lot of the nature reserves around it. We, in our garden, have got more biodiversity than a lot of the nature reserves around us. You know, don't let people fool you into these bucolic pieces of nature reserve, much as obviously we want those, and obviously we want to keep those, but don't let them tell you that's the only place. Because the place on the left, Canvey Wick, which is a post-industrial site near us, abandoned 50 years ago, more biodiversity per square metre than anywhere in the country of invertebrates. More. In 50 years. Only 50 years. Now, it feels to me like with climate change, we cannot hang around. We can't plant some trees. Obviously, plant trees, that's obviously going to fix everything. We just plant some trees. So we can't just plant trees and then go, let's hang around till it becomes an ancient woodland. That'll fix things, right? No, we can't, can we? We need places like Canvey Wick because they're complicated, open mosaic habitats, mosaics of materials and structure. That's why they're so good. And that's become that good in 50 years, just 50 years. Imagine, compared to ancient places, you know? And we didn't even design that, right? Imagine if we had a new landscape and we learned from Canvey Wick and we learned why that's so good, which we do know now, and we designed a new landscape. We could make that happen in 30 years, I would say, because we're quite smart. There's a lot of probably good garden designers out here could definitely do that. So imagine if we started to adopt this attitude in our new landscapes, in our new public space. Imagine if we started to learn from these places. It would be incredible. So here's a structure. This is a structure that we built in our, well, I didn't build it. This really slightly pisses me off, this thing, because I got a dry stone waller from Devon to come up to my house, and I gave him some Essex stone, which is obviously demolition waste. We don't have any natural stone in Essex, we just have demolition waste. So I gave him demolition waste, a massive pile of this demolition waste, and he made that in 4 days. And there's several things about that I think's wonderful. One is that it cost me 30 quid for the demolition waste, because it was just demolition waste, and it cost me £1,400 in labour. Yeah, but that's... Find someone to do that for you for 1,400 quid. You won't find anyone, yeah? And what that is, that's that conversation, is that we've invested money in people and their skills and what they do with their hands. We haven't thrown all the money into expensive materials, have we? We've swapped it round and said, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to give money to people who actually do things. And that's one of the things I love about this. And it's reusing material. So that's built from local houses around Basildon. That's what that is, definitely. The bad side is that everybody loves that, and it's the only thing I haven't done in my garden. And so that really does get me a bit pissed, actually. And my wife's garden, obviously, is very popular as well, and my wife's food. All the things that I have nothing to do with. Anyway, so here's another example of structure. So what would happen if you imagine if you're a stream or a river, imagine what it would have been like when we weren't involved in the management of the riverbank, right? So one is it would have had beavers dotted all the way up and down it, and two is it would have had trees falling in it, wouldn't it? Obviously. And when the tree fell in the river, we wouldn't have gone out there and pulled it back out again, would we? Right? Because we weren't there. So what trees do that fall in rivers, and this is a wonderful group up near me in Hackney that work on the River Lee, they're felling trees into the river deliberately. As soon as you do that, you trap material where the tree's fallen, you create nesting space, you create a microclimate, you slow the flow down where the tree is, which dumps the silt, which creates a different environment, and then around the outside of the tree, the flow speeds up, takes the silt away, and you end up with a gravel bed. So just dumping a tree in there, you've immediately ramped up the biodiversity of that place. Unbelievably good. And these are the things that we need to keep. Now, I'm not saying, you know, everyone wants to fell a tree into a river, but this is just the conversation we need to understand. Now, around Basildon, where we are, this is a more usual thing for us. And this, obviously, does a similar thing. It's an urban tree, a shopping trolley. You know, and as much as I'm not suggesting you go around and throw trees and shopping trolleys in rivers, it improves the this is in my pond in my house. I had to get a shopping trolley to do this. Sadly, no one dumped one in there, which was a bit of a shame. By putting this in my pond, I've improved the biodiversity of my pond. I definitely have. And it's like when you imagine, like, where do scuba divers go swimming? Where do scuba divers go to see all the wildlife, apart from coral reefs, obviously, which there's hardly any left now? They go around shipwrecks, don't they? Right? Shipwrecks. And in fact, we're wrecking ships specifically to become the habitat that scuba divers can ride. So that's exactly the same. Do you know what I mean? An ocean is better off with a shipwreck in it than without a shipwreck in it. It's the same way as we go back to our bucolic wildflower meadow, which is obviously what we all love. And if you say, if someone said to me, how could you improve the biodiversity of the wildflower meadow, apart from obviously putting a bad shed in it, I would say, get a load of people to walk through it. So get a load of people to walk through it, create a desire line, you open the soil up, you create bare soil, you create vegetation, difference in vegetation structure, and you definitely improve the biodiversity of that meadow. Because if you're a ground nesting bee, for instance, and you want bare soil to nest in, and wasps, there's a huge proportion of them need that. In a standard wildflower meadow, you won't have anywhere to go. If you send people through the middle of it, you've created another new habitat. So we shouldn't be afraid. And I think the other, I'm not going to get past slide 5, I guess. But anyway, the other lovely thing is about this, what I love about this conversation is that you can say people in the landscape are good. And, you know, we should get away from this thing of, oh, don't touch, don't tread on anything, don't pick anything, God forbid. You know, this is what happened. Imagine what was happening before we were there. Imagine these millions of bison. Imagine what they were doing. So I love this conversation because it means that people in the landscape are good. And there's another really good example of a limestone quarry up in somewhere past Birmingham. It was, kids used to use it for riding their bikes over. It was a really popular spot for push bikes and for motorbikes and all that kind of so-called antisocial behaviour. An ecologist wandered in there one day and lo and behold, he found all this incredible stuff. And immediately he found all this stuff. Obviously, he had the conversation with people and said, this place is amazing. And everyone went, well, we've got to get the kids out. This is a really important place. We've got to get the kids out. And of course, it was the kids disrupting the space that created that space, that created that exciting thing. And that, I think, is really good to know because that involves us then in the creation of good places. Now, I'm not suggesting you do this, obviously not, but we are in negotiation with our local council to get this one left because it's in a bit of an out-the-way place. And I'm going to send, I've got lovely, wonderful entomologist friends. Has anyone got any entomologists as friends here? Yeah. Yes. If you haven't got an entomologist as a friend, get in bed with an entomologist, I'm telling you, because they are, no joke, you will love it. Entomologists bring everything to life. Anyway, so what I'm trying to do is get my mate James, the entomologist, to survey this after 3 years for biodiversity. And I will guarantee there is more biodiversity in that than there is in that piece of vegetation next to it. Because look how complicated it is. Look how many niches. Look how many different materials. Look at the topography. Now, again, I'm not saying we do this, but this is what you need to have in your head when you're designing spaces. The complication of places is so fantastic. This is what you can do. If you want to tidy a fly tip up and make it acceptable, then you can put it in a cage. Yeah, I mean, you know. And you can put the cage nice and level, have the cage on a string line, get really, really careful about how you set the cages out, make them really precise, and then fill them with all sorts of rubbish, right? And then people are happy. You know, really happy. This is the one at our place. People visit us, they go, oh, that's really nice. And if I'd have just put a pile of, obviously, fly tip there, they'd have gone, wow, that's really shit. So, and inside these cages, you can put all sorts of really fascinating things. Like the pipes that are sticking out the top, they are I really like this phrase, so they're called hoverfly lagoons, which has got some sort of exotic feel to it. You know? They're obviously just stagnant pieces of water, actually, is what they are. And hoverflies lay their eggs in there, and they produce rat-tailed maggots, which are the larvae stage of hoverflies, and then you get beautiful hoverflies, which are vitally important. But without stagnant water, you don't get there's a whole bunch of hoverfly species you won't get. That's a great place to put a stagnant water, yeah? Because it's not easy to find places to put stagnant water. Because I do a lot of work in public space, and when I suggest designing stagnant water in, there's a bit of a reaction against it. Anyway, you can secrete them in these things. It makes you happy then. You can make structure tidy. This is my son. He will be so pissed that I've got this slide of him. I sneaked it out without him knowing. And he made some of this habitat stuff for us. So this is the conversation around making habitat, making structure look beautiful. You don't have to make it look woolly and horrible, right? Don't let people tell you a place has to be untidy to be really good for wildlife. If you think about it, you can make places beautifully untidy, in effect. And this is one of those things. So you can get the same, because the bugs and the bees don't care if it looks cool. They don't really care if it looks cool or not. here's another structure. I don't know, it doesn't quite fit into the talk, but I thought I'd show it to you because I'm rather proud of this thing. This is a device, that's the best I could do to call it, that deals with the sink water that comes out of our sink in our yard where we build green roof bike shelters. And it filters, the water comes out, runs along the gutter, it drops through holes in the gutter, it goes into the bottom of the trug, the water comes up through the trug, over the top of the trug, down through the sand, and then drips out of the trug eventually. So we're dealing with our sink waste, and you get the most beautiful, lush vegetation, guilt-free, right? So if you know you walk into someone's garden and they've got a big area of lush, especially around us in Essex this year, anyone who had lush was like, you know, you've obviously been watering, you're wasting water, why are you doing that? You know, deal with your sink water, then you can feel really good about having lush vegetation because this water would normally have gone down the drain anyway, you know. You can get structure on green roofs. Don't just think about green roofs as a place for plants. In fact, as a place for plants, certainly in the southeast where we are, they burn off every year, yeah? They die every year, pretty much, right? So the plant side of them only has a certain benefit. The structural elements, again, you can use on a green roof, and they have all year round benefit. And you can do little kind of easy structures like this. So in our yard, going back to our yard in Barking Riverside, where we build bike shelters, we needed to have portable habitat because we're on a meanwhile space. We're on a space that we're going to have to move again. And this we found was a really nice, really quick, easy way to make a planter. So you get your delivery in your dumpy sack. Now, in our case, obviously, we're getting waste material delivered into dumpy sacks. So this is ceramic waste in this one, which is toilets, sinks, all that stuff crushed up. It's brilliant for growing plants in. Brilliant for growing plants in. Put it in a sack, get the sack delivered, put a piece of weld mesh around it. You know, you can buy from most metal suppliers. And clip it together. It springs into a circle, and then fill in the gap between the dumpy sack and the weld mesh. So leave the bag there, and then just fill in. And then you get a really cheap, really good planter. Very, very easy. And you get the structural element of the rubble on the outside, creating a habitat as well as your planting. Hedge laying. I guess Somerset is quite a bit of a hedge laying place, isn't it? Like Essex was a bit less hedge laying. When I laid my front hedge 35 years ago, we had campaigns and the local villagers out, like with, you know, pitchforks, because they thought I was cutting the hedge down, and they didn't realise I was laying it. That was 35 years ago. Anyway, we laid it, and we spent ages, you know, like you do. If anyone's done hedge laying, you really kind of get obsessed about it, and it's quite a wonderful thing. And you spend ages clipping things, taking all the dead stuff out, cleaning all the base out, making it look like that. Now we're thinking, and this will really piss off the neighbours, we're going to hedge lay with a mini digger and a chainsaw. So we chainsaw through a bit, and then we pull the tree over with a mini digger. Now, I know there's no craft in that, I understand that, but it will create actually quite an amazingly interesting, complicated new hedgerow, won't it? It's not going to be straight in a line, it's going to be doing this, it's going to have lots of niche, we're going to leave all the dead stuff in, really important. You shouldn't really take all the dead stuff away. Anyway, I am not suggesting either way. They're probably somewhere in the middle of those two things, but I'm just trying to suggest you think about everything slightly differently. If they tell you to lay a hedge like this, then maybe don't lay a hedge like that. If they tell you you need good quality topsoil with a load of organic material to be a gardener, say, no, you don't. You don't. You don't always. You know what I mean? Everything in our world of horticulture, I'd say, you can question all the time. So this is a bit of basic topography. I just got a mini digger, I dug a trench, I made a mound. Right, so instead of a flat area, we've made a trench which we've put common reed into. So we wouldn't be able to grow the reed on the surface, it would be too dry. We've made a trench, we've made it wetter. We can now grow common reed, and we do this with willow as well at our place. We dig a big hole and we plant it in the bottom of the hole. And then it's always wet. So you play around with topography to actually give you wider choice of plants. And this is a classic case of topography. This is the Manchester Viaduct. It's having millions of pounds spent on it through the National Trust. And they got me up there. I don't know why they got me up there, actually. They paid me. They paid me to come and give my opinion on it. And my opinion was you should leave the bloody thing as it is. which was not the opinion they actually wanted from me, because they had 5 million quid sitting there waiting to go, you know? So, because what happened on this railway, so this is in the air on a steel deck with a load of granite chippings on it and been left for 30 years. It's the most beautiful piece of vegetation you've ever seen. And one of the things that I noticed particularly was that they made, the engineers had dug through the chippings to check the condition of the steel deck. So they dug a hole and they chucked it to one side. That was about 6 or 7 years ago. And those holes were full of ferns and damp-loving plants. Nowhere else on that whole viaduct were there any of those. Just that simple change in topography had created that more diverse plant community. Beautiful. So, we need dead stuff. We need unhappy things as well. Unhappy vegetation is actually rather nice. So, this is a tree that fell over, or rather the branch fell off at my place, you know, and you look at that and you go, that's going to make that a bit unhappy, that tree, probably. But what it's going to do is it's going to increase the amount of dead material. It's going to increase the biodiversity. It's going to make me happy. The tree will be unhappy. I'll be happy. So if we want to get dead material into our landscape, we should design it in. You know, like I was saying at the beginning, no one talks about designing dead things in very much. Dead hedges, maybe. And design in standing dead. Standing dead wood is one of the most, if not the most important dead material in a sunny place. So you want it standing upright and you want it sunny, and then you get lots and lots of invertebrates use that. The problem normally is, like I had this problem at my place, not enough trees died at my place. It was really annoying. I don't know how long I'd have to wait for a tree to die. It was ages, probably. So we managed to get some trees from some of the work we were doing, and we dug a hole and we planted dead trees. All right, so plant your dead trees. Then you can put them in the perfect place. You can make them part of your design. You can feel happy about it. And you also know how long it will be before they fall over, because you know the condition of the tree. If a tree dries naturally, it's quite difficult for local authorities to leave them because they're not sure when they're going to fall over. Whereas if you plant your dead trees, when I was talking to a local authority the other day, I recommended to them that they plant dead trees because then they wouldn't get any flack when the tree died. You know, because poor local authorities, every time they plant a tree and it dies, they just get hammered, don't they? You know what I mean? So plant a dead one, then you'll be fine. And then you can combine dead and beautiful. This is an artist at the Gothenburg Botanical Garden. Now, he designed these things for the beauty of them, not for the habitat potential of them. But lo and behold, all the holes he drilled are full of bees now. So I think there's a huge potential in public art to combine an artist's skill and the habitat. So we give an artist a commission and say, here's your commission, here's your money, here's the structural element that we know a local invertebrate is very keen on. We'd like you to design that in. And I think there's huge possibilities in public art for that. Dead hedges are great. I'm sure probably there's people who've done dead hedges here, I'm sure. Are they? Hands up, anyone's done dead hedge? Oh, there you go. Right, so dead hedges are becoming much more mainstream, aren't they? Thank God, because they're so, so cool. One is you have somewhere to put stuff, which is the biggest pain in the neck in gardening, isn't it? It's all right cutting things. That's quite nice, isn't it, when you just cut things? It's knowing what to do with it all. Put it in a dead hedge, take your time, put them all the same way, and then you get this beautiful, curvy... So you get beautiful design, you get structural habitat that's really good for biodiversity, and you deal with your waste on site. So dead hedges really make sense. So because my trees weren't dying, we had to make an effort for them to try and get them to die. So on the left is a bunch of students from UCL University in London, and when they come down and see me and I teach them, in inverted commas, I let them abuse a tree, yeah? And this is the best thing they have. This is, you can forget all the other stuff they've been taught the rest of the year. Giving them a drill and a sharp knife and say, abuse my tree is the best thing. And immediately you do that, you start to create fungus, more lichen, more vertebrates, and the tree grows perfectly fine. Don't worry about the tree. In fact, it's so difficult to kill a tree, in fact. And the one in the middle, that's a weeping willow at my place, which was a big weeping willow. Now, I don't know about you, I don't understand the weeping thing. I don't quite get how in the natural evolution, That's loads of time. In the natural evolution of things, did nature decide they were going to weep? What was the reason for that? Does anyone know if there's a reason for that? I can't stand them. I'm sorry if you, but I really can't stand weeping things because I don't understand why they're even there. Anyway, someone knows. Yes.
I think weeping trees are actually artificially bred.
Yes, of course. Yes, that's what I'm sort of leading to. I didn't know whether they naturally evolved for any particular shedding snow, maybe. I don't know. I don't know. You know. So you
About this a little while ago, it's something to do with the genes and like the genes control.
yeah, it's a mutation that we've picked up on. Yeah.
That's the how, not the why. It's the reason.
But it's not a naturally, it wouldn't be there in naturally if we hadn't bred it on. That's what I'm trying to say. Anyway, let's stay too long on the weeping thing, sorry. It was a weeping willow. I didn't like it. So we badly abused it. So we got my mate, the tree surgeon, in and asked him to do, it was the best day of his life. I asked him to do all the things he shouldn't do when he's cutting a tree down or pruning a tree. So it split, we drilled holes in it, we hacked it with an axe. Now, when we have James the entomologist round, that is the most biodiverse place in my garden, by far. That concentration, because it now has all those wonderful invertebrates that are associated with dead, and it's still alive. That's what you really want. You know, like, probably one of the most biodiverse things there is in the countryside is a heritage ancient oak tree. And what's that? That's living on the outside and totally dead in the middle. So it's rotting and living at the same time. That's why it's so fantastic, and that's why we obviously want to save these things. But we can't wait for an ancient oak tree. Climate change is a bit too lively for that, and that we've got to make things happen quicker. So this is a way to do it. Now, obviously, you're not going to do that in, I don't know, outside your local town hall or wherever else. But there's places you can do this, I think, and it would be really exciting. You'll get very excited about it. And this is the kind of pinnacle of my abuse, I guess. So this is where I've cut the tree down. So the stump's still growing. I've strapped, this feels a bit mean, actually. If this was actually an animal, I would definitely be locked up for this. So I cut it down. I strapped the bit I'd cut off back to the living tree, or rather I screwed it back to the living tree, and then I strapped a piece of pipe that I filled with vegetation and water to make a stagnant water. So what I've done there, I've tried to make a 15-year-old tree into an ancient tree. So I've given it dead material and I've given it hollow, because you know the hollows that form in old trees that water collects in, really good for biodiversity, but with hardly any now. You don't see trees like that much, don't you? So we've done those three things with that tree. And this is me, the sweaty old man, trying to upright a standing dead. So this was a big piece of standing dead that we managed to get hold of, and this is me planting it with the help of a HIAB. And this we're going to get monitored from going in, and we're going to keep it monitored, hopefully, for as long as I can afford to pay James the entomologist to check it and see the layers of biodiversity that come in on the back of that. Vertical dead, that's good. Strap grass, your cuttings and stuff. A lot of head gardeners are starting to do this now, where you stick a stake in the middle of your herbaceous area, and when you cut down your beautiful stems, you just tie them to your stake for a while. They look really cool, and they keep all that, because there's loads of stuff in that stem waiting to hatch, and if you take it to the compost bin and bury it, it's not going to be so happy. So keep them in there, keep them as long as you can, and you can make something that looks quite cool, I think. And dead piles. So the whole meadow thing, it's another thing about meadows. Obviously, you're told, quite rightly, as soon as you cut your meadow, you take all your stuff away, don't you? Because you don't want to leave the nutrients in your meadow. You want to reduce the nutrients in your meadow, which makes sense, perfect sense. But you can concentrate your nutrients, if you'd like. And I find concentrating the nutrients on top of some of the vegetation that's really bad. You know, like you've always in a meadow, you've always got some bad vegetation. I don't know, where there might be some creeping thistle or there might be some docks and stuff, you know. Put your haystack on top of that. That deals with the bad vegetation, and then leave it there for a while. So that creates unbelievably good habitat. Unbelievably good, way better than if you would imagine if you cut a hay meadow, you remove every piece of habitat in one go. Things got nowhere to go. So this is a good place for things to hide out in for a while. And then, if you want to, you can either leave it there, or you can, and maybe in the spring, or maybe a year later, you can take the hay off, put it in the compost, because it's much reduced by now anyway, and then you've got a lovely piece of bare soil that you can replant and reseed. So that whole process creates a lot of interesting stuff. Okay, so I'm on to substrates, which is probably what I was supposed to talk about at the start. So this is me looking very excited on the top of a pile of toilets, sinks. This is the ceramic waste that I was telling you about earlier. This is our local tip. So it gets all the demolition stuff, that's the sanitary ware, and then it crushes it up. And it tries to flog it to you as a decorative aggregate, right? And it calls it, I think it called it Trax Max. Now, I don't know who made that name up and what it's got anything to do with this. And they try and sell it as some sort of decorative. It's pretty, not that nice. So we buy the dust. They sell the big bits, and we buy the 10 mil or 8 mil to dust, which is the waste of the waste, which they virtually give it to you. And this is what we use to grow plants in. Okay, I've said that bit. So these are growing in the ceramic waste. Now, doesn't that look beautiful? So you've got the wonderful contrast of in fact, the substrate then becomes part of the design. You know what I mean? It's not just the plants, it's actually the soil around the plants that become part of the design. And this is the other problem we have. This is the other snag. So this is the A13, which anyone knows Billy Bragg. Anyone know Billy Bragg? So Billy Bragg sung about the A13. Look him up, right? He sung about the A13. It's my road, it is. Yeah, it's the Nuts Road. Goes from Limehouse through to Shoeburyness. Anyway, I don't know why I said that. This is the A13. They widened it near me, so they made it wider. They scraped the embankments back. They made these beautiful sandbanks. Right? Now, where we are, near the Thames, we have the Thames terraces, which sort of run down to the Thames. They are ecologically, from a biodiversity point of view, gold standard places. Those kind of gravelly, sandy banks, they are full of biodiversity, and the council bangs on about them all the time, have been really popular things. They create a mile-long extra Thames terrace by making this road wider, and then they cover it in topsoil, right? And that totally destroyed all the... And we campaigned and campaigned to try and stop them doing it. Anyway, this is them doing it. And they not only covered that bit, they covered every tiny inch. I couldn't even find a half an inch in it. Because I was so upset about that, I managed to find the haulier who was taking away all this sand, because they had hundreds of thousands of tons of sand. I found the haulier and managed to get him to give me the sand. So I live 2 miles from here, and so I got him to drop me 80 ton of the A13 sand, which has been the best thing I could have ever done. And he gave it to me virtually for free, because he didn't know what to do with it. And this is what we do with it. So this is a path. This is a metal grate, and if you're interested in doing paths and trying a few different things with paths, metal grates are really good for paths. One is, of course, they're porous, so they let the water through. 2, you can grow your plants under them, right? So you're not losing any plant space. And if you plant smelly plants under them, as you walk down it, you get this kind of, bucolic kind of smell of herbs coming up. Yeah, you can feel really good when you walk down them. And 3, you can maintain them by getting your mower, putting it on the lowest setting and just pushing it over the grate. So really good. What we've done is we've put Thanet sand in, which we know is the most popular sand for wasps. And no, this is not social wasps, don't get worried, social wasps not. This is solitary wasps and solitary bees. They love to nest in this stuff. So we've not only got plants in this path, it's not only a path, it's not only easy to maintain, but we've also created a breeding space for bees and wasps, important bees and wasps. Hogging paths are the same. It's great to think about everything you do and try and get it to do more than one thing. So if you've got a path, you just want to go from A to B in a civilized sort of way, think about what sort of material you can use to create habitat or give more plants a space or be porous. Everything you do, it's kind of cool to keep thinking everyday stuff. How can we make it do more than one thing? This is another example. So I was a bit pissed about seeing all these acoustic fences down the side of roads. You know those boring bits of, I don't know what they are, pressure-treated wood with a felt in the middle of them or whatever they do. Anyway, like you drive and you just think, there's miles and miles of that. So we did this fence, which is an 8-inch wide fence. We put perforated steel either side. We packed it through with that lovely Thanet sand that came from the A13. And the wasps and bees nest in through the holes in the side, and you can plant the top. And acoustically, it's the nuts. So you get all the infrastructure things with the extra layer of biodiversity on top. So fences are really good to think about. You can do all sorts of interesting things with fences. Rubble's really good. This is a car park we did up near us on a Wildlife Trust site. This is a classic example. where all the money was spent. So they got a load of money from the lottery, 2 million quid was spent on the visitor centre, right? £2 million on the visitor centre. Some core 10 steel clad thing, no green infrastructure, no possibility of habitat. And then they wanted me to do something with the 150 car park for 40 grand. Yeah, I mean, they are the Wildlife Trust after all. So, which, you know, obviously the emphasis is on the core 10, not on the wildlife. That's the main thing. But that's the nature of that's just the nature of the funding. And you probably heard me talk about this if you were at the last panel talk. But £2 million on the visitor centre, 40 grand on the landscape and habitat potential of the car park. Madness, total madness. This is public money donated by very generous, mostly working class people to the lottery. So we should make more use of it than doing that shit, if you ask me. So, recycled sharp sand. So you can get recycled sharp sand. You know, you normally get your builder's sand, which is your builder's sharp sand, which you use for construction. That's washed. So that has to be washed for construction, otherwise you can't put cement with it. But you can get recycled sharp sand. Don't ask me where it comes from, right? Sometimes it comes from dredging. Sometimes it comes from what's left over when they sieve a load of the material from when they're crushing stuff. I don't know for sure. Anyway, what I do know is that plants grow in it fine, and it's much more, you can feel much better about buying that than you do your washed sharp sand, because that's very much a mined material and very much more energy in producing it. And this is the chalk I was talking about. That's the chalk from the sugar production. Great. Amazing stuff. And here's another material that's really good to you, especially if you've got your gardening on clay. So if you do any work and you're digging some holes and you've got left with all this beautiful sticky clay, why don't you make it into a wall of some sort, or make it into something. So we made that it's a really bad job, but we did make that, that thing. And it was clay from the garden, bit of straw, bit of sand. Now, that vertical clay surface, that mimics a soft cliff habitat. I'm trying not to be too nerdy here, but a very important habitat. And we've now got, within 2 years, we've got 12 species of bee and wasp nested in that tiny piece of cob. Now, that's one tiny piece of cob in a huge area around us that doesn't have any vertical clay surface. So that's the potential. If you put in structural elements like these, and you've got to keep your eye out for invertebrates, you will find so exciting invertebrates that will turn up, and they'll find that. And we found a chimney wasp that used that's only nests in vertical clay, and then we found the parasite of the chimney wasp that only parasized that wasp within a year. This is the exciting thing about doing these structural elements. And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to make cob columns and put those in meadows. Now, that's an AI. I did an AI thing, look. What do you think? It's pretty good. I've never done an AI thing before, but anyway, it's not bad, is it? So, you know, we're going to use cardboard shuttering that you use for concrete, make cob columns come up out of your meadow. They hardly take any space up, and they're going to add that whole layer of biodiversity onto your meadow, aren't they? You know, that structural element again. Cross concrete's really good. I'm going to have to quick through. Brick waste is really good. But arrange your stuff. If it's a waste, treat it, you know, like worship your waste. Arrange it in a beautiful circle. That's what we always do. Very precise about the way we arrange it, and then people are okay about it. And, of course, the other big thing about using inert subsoils or waste is that it's completely weed-free. So when you go with if you want to direct sow an area, you know, and create these beautiful flowery mixes, it's really hard in topsoil, isn't it? Because topsoil's full of weed seed. And it's really difficult to create a clean base for your seed mix without using a chemical, isn't it? I don't know how you do it, in fact. It's quite hard. Whereas this stuff is completely weed-free. You'd put it down, you sow your seeds straight into it. And if you direct sow a landscape, that's by far and away the most sustainable way you can create a landscape, isn't it? So you have... 2 minutes? 1 minute? How long have I got? 1 minute. 2 minutes. Good. 2 minutes. So if you direct sow a landscape, you don't use pots, you don't use compost, you don't use plastic, you don't water things every single day to make these pots and compost. That is the most sustainable way to do a landscape, but you can't do it very easily on standard topsoil So if you're doing a bit in your garden and you're moving soil around, move some of your topsoil where you need it a bit more, where you want the rich soil and your veg patch and stuff. Expose your subsoil and then use that to sow your seeds in, and then you'll get an amazing. And of course, the randomness of direct sowing is so beautiful. I'd say direct sowing and then hand weeding after you've direct sown that is gardening for me. That is actual gardening summed up. You know, that beautiful process of thinking, I'll leave that one and I'll take that one out. That whole process, wonderful. Blah blah. Oh, this is what happens with if you put thanet sand down. This is some of the bees that nest in our thanet sand. Now, we were on clay, so we never had these bee species until we dumped sand there. I haven't got time to talk about that. Don't worry. This is all growing on construction waste, right? So if anyone has been to my place or, have seen my place, you'll know it isn't a mess. It is quite beautiful, and it's all growing on this rubbish. And we have 1,450 invertebrate species. We've gone from 60 to 180 species of bees and wasps in 5 years, simply by structural changes, not plant changes. We had loads of flowers before, but we had nowhere for things to breed, nowhere for things to hibernate, and we didn't have any dead things. So that is what's done it, not the plant choice. So this is my wonderful friend Carmel from Dublin. Aren't she genius? And this is a not-for-profits thing we've set up, which I sort of touched on in the last one, but if anyone wants to know more about that, they can come and scan my arm later. This is all about training gardeners in everything other than horticulture. So ecology, all the things we've been talking about today, not necessarily horticulture, ecology, community, green infrastructure, all those wonderful things that I think gardeners kind of do, but we're going to give them the extra training in, which we do for free. That's it. Thanks.
Questions, hands in the air. Any questions for John?
Most of that was lies. You've got to have a question.
Hi. How do you keep these dead structures upright and safe?
You mean the timber the trunks we put in, you mean? I usually use brick and concrete, like crushed waste brick and concrete, so dig the hole and then ram that round them when you stand them up. You don't need to use concrete, poured concrete, definitely not. They'll stand, and you just make your hole deep enough, and you won't push them over because they've got no leaf cover, so the wind force on them is tiny.
Great, thank you.
Any more questions?
Hello. I'm wondering about sourcing these sorts of materials and how useful it would be if there was some sort of national database where when there is waste or something's being demolished, that there was somebody could put
that would
it in.
Be good.
Because both small and large garden projects, so for the individual, but also if you're trying to specify a project that's a year away from being built, it's hard to cost, it's hard to specify.
Yeah.
You want to how do you?
Well, I think that's a really interesting question. Because wouldn't it be great if we had a website where you could post what waste you were going to produce from your project, and then people who might be local that might want to use that could actually use that. That would be a great idea. I don't know if anything exists like that, but that would be really good. What we do have in the bigger picture, in other words, in the big developments, is that when architects come to develop a big area, the demolition crew will go in and they'll assess the waste that's going to come from that site, and they'll give the architect a list of the waste. And at the moment, I don't think architects necessarily know what to do with that list. And I would say that is the point to have those wonderful conversations about you could use it back into your landscape, you could use it here, you could use it there. And, but I think the idea of having a website that would connect people who have waste to the people who want waste would be really genius.
John, hi. My husband has just cleared a huge space where he's going to put a small patio, and we've dug out stone, waste, rubble that's probably been in there for about 100 years, and we've just piled it against the wall. And the idea was that we would get rid of it.
Yeah.
But actually, having listened to you, I'm thinking to myself, probably shouldn't. We should keep it.
You've been listening to me too much if you start swearing.
We should keep it, but should we put it in a damp space or a bright space, or does it not matter where you put it?
I guess you'll get more biodiversity if you put it in a sunny place.
Right.
But then on the other hand, you might want your plants in a sunny place. I think that's for you to decide. It would be useful in anywhere, but in a sunny place, there'll be more biodiversity in it. Yeah, if you can. There's always the sunshine just drives biodiversity on the whole.
I just got to tell him then he's got to move it all again from the
Oh, okay.
put it all back again.
Yeah, get him to move it again. It's fine. I feel like a cooking show now. I've seen these on telly, these things. Yes.
I was wondering if there was any substrate that you've used that is ended up being a contaminant in the garden that you would advise not using.
Well, I'd say what you have to do is shift that responsibility onto the supplier. Yeah, because you can't take that responsibility on. So if you're buying the material from a supplier, he will have to conform to those things. So where we get our waste material from, where the demolition goes, they are responsible for checking that to make sure it's not contaminated.
So I'm designing a garden and I've got the waste material in the garden. I want to keep it in there,
Yeah.
getting rid of it.
Mm.
Is there anything moving forward?
I think that's tricky. That might be a case of making a sensible decision by having a physical look at it, I guess. I don't think you can ever be 100% sure, can you? But most people are reusing. These things tend to kind of roll around in gardens anyway. I think if it's on a bigger project, you'd probably have to get it checked. I'm guessing on a smaller domestic space, unless you can see something obvious, because it tends to get used back in underneath paths and things anyway, traditionally, or for many years, we've put it underneath concrete bases on garages and stuff, haven't we? I don't have a direct... It's very hard to say for sure with that. You could definitely do that. You could definitely leave it in place. Oh, sorry. Sorry, I couldn't be more specific.
I've got half an answer.
Ah, good.
That's very... I'm not used to our quiz. Okay. So, if it's on a larger project and it's demolition or being taken away, it may well be worth talking to the partner, whoever that contractor is, because eventually it's got to be recycled and...
Yeah, maybe that's the answer.
yeah.
Maybe that's the answer. Is to maybe if it worked, say to the people who were taking it away, where are you taking it, and then you could, if you wanted, sort of buy a similar amount back, and then you'd be safer. Then you know it's gone through that process. Maybe.
Even if they're the person who's eventually going to have to assess it, perhaps they could assess it on site if it was a large enough site.
Maybe. I think that would if it was a large enough job, I think that might be more expensive than actually arranging for it to know where it's to go, and then maybe buying some material. Because also when it goes away, you can get it crushed into whatever size you want. You can buy whatever size crushed material you want, which is more useful if you're redesigning it back in. Unless you do a dry stone wall, and then you need a lot of different bits. Yeah.
Thank you very much, John. Thank you. Big round of applause for John. That was fantastic. Ari Anderson is in the Bookworm right now, signing copies of her book. And please be sure to come back here for 3 for Paul Jupp, Meadow in My Garden. John Little, fantastic. So many ideas. Amazing.